Hi, we are continuing our interview with Dr. Rohini Kanniganti now. And she was just about to start to share with us how her study of Ayurvedic medicine has shaped who she is today.
Thank you. This is so much fun, the most important thing happens in the present moment. It's always teaching us. So you adapted to poor Wi-Fi with a smile by doing whatever you needed to do. That's the thrust of Ayurvedic definitions of health. It's adaptation to what's going on in the present moment. It invites the witness of the right brain and that prefrontal cortex, that wise mind, and all of our resources, and says everything is important, everything is connected. Now you can do that at a very, very micro level, or you can really start to see the whole and engage with life at a huger level, and it doesn't matter. It's a very non-judgmental process of we are souls incarnated into learning journeys. And so the basis of Ayurveda is profoundly insightful, and it is spiritually based. But then there is also a sense that out of spaciousness came matter. And so we are that, and quantum mechanics, I think we were recently talking about Lothar Schaefer, who reminds me so much of Professor Lowe as an undergraduate, and he's taught that any matter is an emanation of consciousness. And it completely correlates to the offering of Ayurveda. Now, do I sit with my patients and talk to them about that? Heck no, but I walk in there with presence, inviting consciousness and seeing the incredible consciousness that they are, that you are, and the infinite value in each being. And I am only here to love every experience that shows up in myself and in them. And in that moment, and humans are profoundly relational, and Ayurveda supports this so deeply, that it's not, one person on their solitary journey. The hero's journey actually involves everybody. And while the Ayurvedic approach doesn't talk about the hero's journey, but still there is this sense of communion with community. One of my favorite physicians who's done so much with trauma in the brain, in fact, Dr. Dan Siegel, do you know his work?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's amazing. And Dan Siegel once did, I think he refers to this quite a lot. He said, I asked my teacher, who I think was a Hindu guru he was referring to, he said, what's the difference between illness and wellness? And his teacher went to the board and drew the word I, or wrote out illness and wellness, and circled the I of illness and the we of wellness, which doesn't denigrate the need for individual progress and growth. We're highly contextual as human beings. Yeah. And the reason that we are, even if we don't realize the gigantic divine underpinning, it's because we are all connected. And it's not just humans. We're connected to all beings, all living beings, and even all matter. We're intrinsically connected to it because after we pass away, after this body completes its journey, it goes back to inanimate.
Which brings me to, I believe that Ayurvedic teaches these three key elements. Is that right?
Five.
Five? And what are those?
Those are space, or what they term ether. Of course, this is a translation from Sanskrit, so it doesn't translate well.
Okay.
And which is the container of everything. And then there's air, which is signified by movement. So in the body, one can relate to the space in all of our hollow viscuses, or visci, and the movement of nerve impulses, the movement of blood, lymph, all of that, the movement of digestive juices and the gas, the movement itself, the life force energy, that's the principle of air. And then there's fire. Fire is the principle of digestion in the body. Here I'm talking, now we're in a fire season, right, where there's a lot of heat. It's so beautiful, and I wish I could be poetically succinct, but the fire within us connects to the fire out there, where it's very, very continuous. So the capacity of our minds to digest perception is the fire element. Our capacity to digest food, in very pragmatic terms, the pancreas is an organ of fire. It produces the enzymes for digestion. And then there's water, and there's earth. And as you can see, there's a progression from, and these are the states of matter that you learned in physics and chemistry, solid, liquid, gas. And that Ayurveda said we came from the unmanifest to the solid manifest. So the earth element in the body is of course, the muscles, the fascia, everything that is truly solid and structural, provides a foundation. And of course, there's lots of water, blood, lymph, water, serum. Yeah.
So those are the five?
Those are the five. Yes, and they interact. They are found in almost everything.
So the first one was
space or ether.
Ether, and then air, earth, fire / heat, and water.
Okay. Earth, wind, and fire, baby.
Yeah, I love it.
Right? I
Awesome.
thought they were onto something there.
So, back to the fire, because when we were a week into global pandemic, I felt heavy.
Yeah.
I felt like weight was on me in the morning.
Right.
And I knew I wasn't sick. What part of that was the weight of the we?
Yeah, beautiful. Wow. That's such a beautiful question, Dutch. You are, as an empathic and sensitive person, you are empathing the feelings of the collective. And again, there's a neurological basis to that. This is our hardwiring. We connect when we're really open, when that prefrontal cortex is alive and well, and it's online. We're very busy empathing and feeling compassion to not only ourselves but to the we. We're profoundly attached and attuned to the world around us, and that's what you were experiencing. Now, we frequently, because, and particularly in this culture, the I is so important, and again, no intention to insult that process. You have to have a self before no self, and frequently, I think the Eastern cultures are bringing in the spiritual faiths or the practices of emptiness and no self, but you can't go there. You do damage to yourself if you don't have a really grounded sense of self. So that is important. But if you are too lost in the extreme of the I, you think that everything that you feel is about yourself. And again, in a hospice and end-of-life context, this is really felt. What you were, because it's not just the person who's dying, it's everyone around them who is feeling every part of that process. And COVID, the heaviness there was a sense of doom and death.
Yeah.
Initially. Now, of course, the medical system globally took on the war language again, lockdown,
Mhm.
um, and, so much, right? There was a lot of um, the language of medicine that I represent, the Western medicine, is frightening.
Yeah.
It's not spacious, it's not empathetic and kind. Um, Nobody got up there to say, we're dealing with a virus. I want us all to be super careful, and we got this.
Yeah.
Right?
That's did not have the voice of Gandhi anywhere.
Nowhere in the process. And neither, and because we don't have that voice, we don't prepare people for all of the feelings they're going to feel um, in what feels like an overwhelming crisis, right? Where you felt heavy, feeling the sense of uncertainty all around you, but as a man in your 50s, you're also wondering, I'm in the danger zone. I could get bombed by this thing because I'm continuing the war metaphors, right?
Well, for me, I just felt very confident that I wasn't vulnerable.
Yeah.
So it really challenged me, this feeling of weight,
right.
Because I knew, in fact, that I wasn't at risk. So there was something else that was weighing on me.
Where in your body did you feel this weight?
Probably as if it was shoulder pads. If you could imagine a football player wearing shoulder pads, and they would weigh 30 pounds.
Right.
There was just an extra heaviness
right.
to movement, it seemed.
Uh-huh. So the metaphor there is that you felt that you were carrying a burden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not only for myself, but for friends as well.
Yeah.
I just felt like, I couldn't quite describe it. I couldn't quite put words around it, but it seemed spiritual. It seemed connected to everything.
Everything. And I'm just curious, what happened to that feeling over time?
I think I learned to carry it gingerly, and I learned to live with it, not to fight against it. There's, again, kind of going back to my work, one of the careful things that we're learning in neuroscience is that the statement, no pain, no gain, is really a grave mistake. When we have pain, we need to slow down. We need to pay attention.
Yep.
So that's what I did. Knowing that I wasn't sick or I wasn't ill or I wasn't probably about to get sick, I had to pause and give space to that. What is it that I'm feeling? Why is it there? How should I move through life with it being there? Because I couldn't fight against it. To do that would have been unhealthy.
Correct.
So I learned to navigate. I worked less. I exercised less. And I behaved as if I was carrying maybe a sickness, but it wasn't a sickness. It was more emotional.
Right. Yeah. You identified not only the weight, but your own inner resistance to that weight. And you created a relationship between yourself and the resistance and the weight. So there was a continuous moving energy between these three, and that's really beautiful. What in my work, I've got who are the people for whom dying is not a huge burden? Who are the people for whom it's not doom and suffering and heaviness, which is a common collective experience around death. When other physicians say, "What do you do?" and I say, "I work, in hospice and palliative care," they say, "Wow, thank you, and I don't know how you do it," because outside of this realm of really stepping into this realm of dying, we engage with it. One of our responses is heaviness. That it just feels really overwhelming and heavy, and we don't know how to carry it. And what I noticed is that often these patients or these families that felt at ease with the process, and I was looking at them and talking with them and interviewing them, what happens? And I noticed that they encounter this sudden change. They accept that change is a part of life. There's a story that allows for things to be crazy. And even if somehow whatever happened was a violent change to that story, something within them, and often, they said faith, but there were certainly atheists who said it was a sense of their connection to the earth. But that meaningfulness that Viktor Frankl talks about, people with a strong sense of meaning that is transcendent were able to allow whatever they were feeling, and slow down into it without judging it. And of course, if I had to put in my Eckhart Tolle spin, or the teacher at Khan, the Mahatma Gandhi, all of them came down to still points within themselves in the presence of tremendous transformation and change. And because what happens when we allow it, frequently when I allow the experience of whatever I'm having, yesterday I felt a lot of pressure in my head from something that I felt overwhelmed by. And as I observed it, without even labeling it, without talking to it, but just observed it as energy, I noticed that it started to move and flow, because everything moves. That is the nature of energy. All of our experiences are energetic. Emotions, the molecules of emotion, Candace Pert talked about that these are mobile molecules that go all over the body to receptors on cells. Amazing, yes. And yes, so much to say about that. But
so my elbow could feel sad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not really, but but it might feel sad and show you pain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is something we talked about in the wind. That in fact, the body manifests emotions in the language that it knows to say, hey, I want a conversation with you. And from allowance, I noticed that people settle into belonging. It's as if you've walked into a strange house you've never seen, just like COVID. And whatever it is that you're feeling in that house, whether it's elation or doom, and everything in between, you allow it. And you sit down on a chair. You start to belong to that milieu. And energy starts to flow, and there is your own sense of almost well-being in the midst of a crisis, this sense of power and this capacity to co-create with the medical system, co-create with your family, co-create with the story that you have around this shouldn't be happening, co-create with your resistance, co-create with a sense of meaning and faith, whatever it is. But you start to become an active participant. And this is the right brain stuff now, right? Because all of this creativity is coming from this wide open perceptual field that Rumi talked about, right? When he talked about out beyond right and wrong, there's a field, I'll meet you there, here's the right brain. That's what that is. And slowly in that process of creativity and co-creativity, more importantly, as the power rises, this sort of vibrational energy seems to rise of the kinds of emotions that we experience, more courage, more energy to interact. The old story starts to really dissolve in the place, like as if you were in a cocoon and you're a caterpillar dissolving, but what there is left is these imaginal cells, these cells that, poetically kind of connecting to this process as our deepest sense of meaning that never dies, our sense of this grandeur of connection, that I am a part of this universe that can never change. And there's the emergence process right there. There's the butterfly that starts to form its wings. And of course, how can death be an emergence? And if you were there, in so many families, there is a completion process, and some people swear, including one of my dearest friends, Dr. Elaine Shire, whose father passed away, and she said from a long bout with dementia, worsening dementia, but she says there was a smile on his face. What is that? Right there, and Steve Jobs saying, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow," at the end of his life. It feels as if something amazing might be happening, whether it's brain chemistry, but many people describe this light process.
And I think in one of your talks, you talk about that we all may be guaranteed a luminous death.
We may be. I don't know. Not having done it, the powers that be in the universe might decide that I should be the exception, just to give me an additional creative process. But maybe I have no idea. I want to be really careful that death is a very, very complex process, and I don't want to diminish it in any way by having any sort of spiritual platforms, but I really do want to say that's a strong possibility, given the number of people who report these experiences of light, that may be shutting down in the brain. Even if there is a creation of that, people swear that there is a peace that passeth understanding, and how wonderful that is. And so my work and my aim has been, how can I bring this peace to while we're still living? Had this profound conversation with a dear friend who was recently diagnosed after he had a seizure. And this is during the time of COVID. This was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Had a seizure, went to the ICU, had brain surgery for a brain tumor that they found, and he's now got 3 months to live. Wow. And so our conversations have changed. And because he's so present and so in the moment, he's holding this process profoundly. And he told me yesterday, he said, when I was in the hospital room, I suddenly had this extraordinary awakening. I had nothing to do, so I asked myself, what is it that I'm willing to look at that I've never seen before? And he said, wow. He saw all the stuff that he had been avoiding and pushing down, even as a meditator, even as a person who was deeply present. And he said, I've been calling everybody and making amends. And I feel this surge of energy, this surge of clean emptiness within. And I had this beautiful conversation with him. Dearest, how can I take this to people so that they can have the breakthrough without a brain tumor, right? And that's the amazing thing in the work that you do and in the work that I do. Yeah. How do we get willing to have the Jill Bolt Taylor moment without having to have a stroke? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Now, in one new avenue in the end of life and also in psychiatry is the use of psychedelics. And I have zero experience with that, either as a practitioner or as a participant. Me too. But people have talked about breaking into that very zone that Jill Bolt Taylor talks about, and that it's changed their life. Right. For me, I frequently feel that when I practice open awareness without conclusion, there is a bliss right there. There is, when I practice just being and slowing down and emptying, right, which is not me pushing it. Right. It's not striving. It's really whatever state I happen to be in, just sitting back and doing this, that there is an experience of the peace that passeth understanding. Yeah. And in it, who I am and who we are becomes so simple and so clear. And that, my teacher, one of my teachers, Matt Kahn, says, if love is the highest vibration, why not clear everything else from the table of consideration?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. One of the things that's given me hope right now is what's happening with George Floyd, all of the awful circumstances that precipitated that. What's been beautiful to observe is the multiracial support of the movement.
Yes.
And in Denver, as we watched the crowds, and my daughter's been participating. And at any rate, it's been wonderful to see the multi-ethnicity there. And so I come back to that we, perhaps, component.
It's we, yes. And the deepest, and here is love as the deepest respect for other human beings. Mm-hmm. Love as radical inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But this is, in the past, when we've had demonstrations and problems, and that there has always been kind of a dying out. There was perhaps demonstration, promises were made, commitments were made that it would change and get better, and then it wouldn't, or it would, the good that was done would somehow undo. But what's different now, it seems, and what gives me hope, is this multiracial aspect of it. Yes. That maybe the we is powerful enough at this stage that the movement will actually endure, that change will actually occur.
Yes. And the we brought back within is then us feeling enough self-worth to listen to all the voices of emotions within us. Mm-hmm. The multitudes that we brushed aside because we didn't want to look at our anger, we didn't want to look at our own hostility, we didn't want to look at our frustration and our confusion. We instead wanted to look at the pleasant experiences of fun and joy and pleasure and easy connection. Mm-hmm. So it's very much inside out as well. There is an outside in process where we're being present with the multitudes of ethnicities and colors coming together, feeling incredible love thanks to the sacrifice. He didn't choose it. He suffered in this last 10 minutes, knowing that he was going, and I have so much compassion for that experience that he went through, and as a culture we have emerged. Yeah.
And hopefully we'll just keep emerging.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, if you would let me, actually, I would love to share this poem that I've shared with you before.
Please.
About the inner experience, the inner multitudes. And here, because I've been feeling the energy of Mahatma Gandhi a lot, you and I share a love of Gandhiji's philosophies, and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and Maya Angelou, and all of my favorite people have been deeply inspired by him. There was in this poem, I was reflecting on his salt march. He marched, I think, several hundred miles to the ocean in a very peaceful protest to go and make the salt of India for India, so that we would decrease British dependence, our indentured slavery to British products. And this was a part of his amazingly wise strategy towards independence, and which took decades, right, in its process. So I'm reflecting on his journey, and so I call this the walker, aka the love revolution. And this is exactly where we're at right now. We're in a love revolution. We're getting really still. We're listening to everything that's going on, and we are emerging together. So the love revolution. Imagine you are the Mahatma. Imagine you are the Mahatma marching with that one faithful stick on uneven paths, marching with that one faithful stick on uneven paths, with quiet, nonviolent inspiration, to the Arabian Sea, to fill your hands with the salt of your authentic self. Who are you walking with? Who are those initial 80 who swell to 50,000 on the way? Might they be a passionate escort of subdued feelings and sensations, yours and the world's? If you speak with one, you get the rest of their family, their talented family trees. If you speak with one, you get the rest of their talented family trees. You find out how sadness begat anger and fear begat isolation, and then anger and isolation begat pain, who then bore rigidity and chaos. They tend to talk all at once, so focus. Ask, dear fatigue, when you are resting, who might I find under the bed? That's how you might meet despair, and under despair, hope, and then courage, who may be short but strong. These revelations allow jokes to fly, and thus 700,000 steps pass, not minded by blistered feet, and you arrive at the great ocean, knowing just how to serve all beings with your abiding journey. And it's so beautiful in the end of life context that there are so many feelings. And these feelings, if you ever get a chance to watch a TEDx talk called The Adventure of Grief, Dr. Jeffrey Warburton, amazing, one of the best things I've ever seen. And he speaks to the importance of the feelings within. And it's as if all these characters of various colors and ethnicities out there are the feelings within. And we meet them, we meet everybody. We love here, we love everything. And how, in Richard Rohr's words, we meet anything is everything.
Wow.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How we meet anything is everything.
Is everything.
Beautiful. So we're just got a couple more minutes left. We'll share a little bit more if that's okay with you. Literally maybe 5 minutes. But a construct that I have that's been growing in terms of life and what life is that it is a series of obstacles.
Yes.
That we're given, and they are our mission to overcome. And these obstacles, many of us will shy away from, or we'll be afraid of, or we won't deal with them. So they just keep on presenting themselves again. But as a series of obstacles, typically these obstacles get bigger and bigger, and that's our training. So the end obstacle is death. It's the biggest obstacle potentially that we all have to face. So if I'm right, I'm not sure that I am, but if I'm right and life is a series of obstacles that are training us, then we face death. And hopefully, I think as we're facing these obstacles, we're also facing the emotions, like you so eloquently wrote about in your poem. We're facing the 50,000 different emotions that there might be. But I wonder and I worry for those who go through the obstacles and they only deal with them in fear.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to that last obstacle, that's the only thing they know how to practice. And so they're terrified.
Yep.
But what words could you give them You've already said so much, and I think you've already given the answer so beautifully. But give that person who's scared about tomorrow, what do we need to tell them, so that when that final object comes, obstacle, when that final obstacle comes, how can they be better prepared for it because of how they deal with that thing tomorrow?
Right. The word obstacle is on its own, brings up in me the feeling of a stone that cannot be moved, a huge boulder. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what our nervous systems would do if we changed that word to challenge.
Sure.
That it's not a problem, that it's not an obstacle,
mm-hmm.
It's not in the way, it's in fact the exact challenge that we need in order to get to higher and higher levels of maturity. And the simplest thing that I would say to everybody, to anyone, to myself, is that what we suffer most from is lack of self-worth for all kinds of different reasons, whether it's life experience or, we have inherited traumas from our ancestors, our culture, our history. The first thing I want to say is, without you doing anything at all, you got this and we got this. It's a we process. We got this together. And that there is nothing wrong with you, no matter what choice you're making. That this is a part of your spiritual evolution. This is so deep and so meaningful. And without you having to do anything, you got this already. And now the rest of the steps are to how to make a better experience of meeting the challenges so that you're not going down the river terrified. You can if you want to, if that's a part of your healing process. There are so many other choices. And I really want, I think the biggest word there is we. Is if most of us don't know how to be with the 50,000 here, so we reach out to receive that love from others that we trust. And Brené Brown talks about this a great deal. Mm-hmm. And to dare greatly to simply reach out and to receive the love. Now, early on in our lives, that love came in the form of very necessary attachment and attunement. And it turns out at every single stage in our life, we need attachment and we need attunement. What you and I are doing, lovingly meeting gaze, lovingly meeting the heart, it's firing all kinds of happy neurons. It's probably releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone. And this is what we need in order to survive and to feel, in fact, the universe in one human being. The gaze of one human being, and we need this all the way through. But if there is anything that I do with my patients and my families and my coworkers, it is to love them into their own self-worth and to love myself. This little being who's moving along, doing the best she can, and I stumble and I fall. And I love it when I take on Monty Python.
Beautiful. Beautiful words. And if we can leave with that, to acknowledge our own self-worth.
Yep.
And help others to discover their own self-worth. What a beautiful, beautiful world that will be. That's
the new earth. That's the new world that we're evolving towards, a new human being.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Kanniganti, Rohini, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a game changer. So good to have you today. And we'll probably be back with another game changer in a week or two. As for now, go and make it a great day and acknowledge your self-worth today. Signing off.